Right, let us come to the urgent question. Nigel Farage.
To ask the Secretary for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs what the latest update is on the transfer of sovereignty of the Chagos Islands from the United Kingdom to Mauritius.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. Following 2 years of negotiation under 3 Prime Ministers, on the 3rd of October, this government secured a deal that will protect the secure operation of the UK-US base on Diego Garcia well into the next century. This government inherited a situation where this future was under threat. International courts were reaching judgments on the basis that Mauritius had sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. International organisations were also taking steps, Mr. Speaker, not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty claims. This was not sustainable. The base, Mr. Speaker, on Diego Garcia plays a critical role in countering an array of threats to regional and international security. Without legal certainty, Mr. Speaker, the base simply cannot operate effectively. Continued uncertainty would be a gift to our adversaries. This is why the agreement has been welcomed by all parts of the US system and by other critical regional security partners, including India. Agreeing this deal now on our terms, Mr. Speaker, means we've been able to secure strong protections that will allow the base to operate as it has done. We've secured a deal that protects our national interests, respects the interests of our partners and upholds the international rule of law. There will be clear commitments, Mr. Speaker, in the treaty for robust security arrangements, including preventing the presence of foreign security forces on the outer islands, ensuring that the base can continue to operate securely and effectively. We would not, Mr. Speaker, have signed off an agreement that compromised any of our security interests or those of our allies. And this agreement will be underpinned by a financial settlement that is acceptable to both sides and will underpin a strong long-term partnership with Mauritius. This was crucial to securing the agreement, Mr. Speaker. This government will not scrimp on our national security. However, I am sure the House will understand, Mr. Speaker, that it is not normal practice for the UK to reveal the value of payments for military bases anywhere across the globe, because to do that would put them at risk of their future secure operations. The deal, Mr. Speaker, will also deliver benefits for the Chagossian community who were removed from the islands in the 1960s and 1970s. And I know that the whole House have already and will again join with me in expressing regret for that shameful episode. Mauritius will now be able to implement a programme of resettlement to the islands other than Diego Garcia, and we will work together to start a programme of visits for Chagossians to all of the islands. And the UK will finance a new trust fund for Mauritius to support Chagossians and provide additional government support to those living in the UK. All Chagossians will, of course, remain eligible for British citizenship and free to make their homes in the UK. We will work, Mr. Speaker, with Mauritius to ensure the continued protection of the island's unique environment, with the shared objective of securing and protecting one of the world's most important marine environments, and this will include the establishment of a Mauritian Marine Protected Area. This agreement, Mr. Speaker, also shuts down the possibility of the Indian Ocean being used as a dangerous illegal migration route to the UK, with Mauritius taking responsibility for any future arrivals. Mr. Speaker, the long-term protection on the base on Diego Garcia has been the shared UK and US priority throughout. This agreement secures its future. We look forward to engaging with the incoming US administration. I congratulate both President Trump and Dr. Ramgoolan on their recent election victories in the US and Mauritius respectively, and we look forward to working with their governments on this. This agreement is in all sides' shared interests and in our national security.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mauritius has no legal or historical claim to the sovereignty of a group of islands that are 1,300 miles away from where it is, nor does, from the International Court. It was purely an advisory opinion. There is no legal reason why we have to do any of this. Now, I warned the Foreign Secretary 6 weeks ago in this chamber that it was an enormous mistake to do this, given that we had a US presidential election coming up on November the 5th. And if you say to me, well, yes, it's okay, the United States are fully in favour, really? I can tell you that the incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, has form on this, right back to when the Right Honourable Member for Braintree was doing his best to give away the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. Indeed, he wrote to Secretary of State Blinken at the time. There is, I can assure you, having been in America last week, knowing also the incoming Defence Secretary very well, there is outright hostility to this deal. Whatever is said about a lease agreement, as we saw with Hong Kong, these agreements can very, very easily be broken. Diego Garcia was described to me by a senior Trump advisor as the most important island on the planet as far as America was concerned. So you're going to find outright hostility. And by the way, when it comes to the Chagossian people, yes, of course, what happened to them was truly awful. They do not wish to live. They're unanimous in this. They do not wish to live under Mauritian rule. They want to live under British rule because they actually trust us. There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm afraid, obviously, I fundamentally disagree with what the honourable gentleman has had to say. Let me be absolutely clear. This government inherited a situation where the long-term secure operation of this crucial military base, he is right on that one point, was under threat. International courts were reaching judgments, international organisations were taking steps not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty, and this threatened the secure and effective operation of the base. And in the absence of a negotiated solution, a legally binding decision against the UK seemed inevitable. This would have threatened the secure and effective operation of the base, and that was not sustainable. I note the comments he makes regarding the incoming US administration. We're looking very forward to working with them, and I'm sure that they will be being briefed on the full detail of this deal. And I am confident, Mr. Speaker, that the details of this arrangement will allay any concerns. We would have not entered into any such arrangement in the first place.
Mr. Francois, I welcome you back to the front bench, but I don't welcome you back to shout from it continuously. Do we understand that we need calm? This is an important debate, so I don't want the rhetoric coming from the Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've known the honourable gentleman a long time, and he knows he can come and speak to me at any point. No, absolutely, Mr. Speaker, but he can come and speak to me about these matters at any point. Mr. Speaker, we were very, very clear. The US administration that's incoming, we will be working very closely. We're working closely with the current US administration. This had support across the national security apparatus of the United States. We would never have entered into an arrangement. And indeed, of course, the previous government recognised the threats to the long-term operation of this base, which is why they started the negotiations in the first place. But it was this government that did the deal. Diego Garcia is absolutely important, but it is not at risk. It is more secure as a result of this deal. So what he is suggesting is simply not the case. He mentions the Chagossians. We all agree what happened to them in the past was completely wrong and shameful. That's been agreed on all sides of the House. I've engaged with the Chagossian community on a number of occasions. He will also recognise, Mr. Speaker, that there are a range of views across the Chagossian community, including those who support this deal. But we've made sure that their interests are at the heart of this arrangement, whether it's in the trust fund, whether it's in the unilateral arrangements that we will do, the continued commitments to UK citizenship for Chagossians, and, of course, their ability to return, Mr. Speaker, in terms of visits to all the islands and to a part of a resettlement programme that Mauritius will restart as a part of this treaty. So I am confident this deal is the right thing for our national security, it's the right thing for the Chagossian community, and it's the right thing for our allies and partners.
We heard representations from the honourable member for Clacton about upholding international law. Does the Minister agree with me that it is important that the UK fulfils its obligations in international law, and does he recognise, in fact, that in 2021 the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea confirmed that, in fact, Mauritius does have sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, and notwithstanding that this deal does secure the long-term certainty of the base on Diego Garcia?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's absolutely right. Agreeing this deal now on our terms means we've been able to secure protections that will allow the base to operate as it has done into the next century. It settles the historic sovereignty claims in a way that successfully balances our international law obligations with vital UK and US national security requirements.
Welcome, Dame Patel, to the front bench.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the world is a more dangerous place than ever before in our lifetimes, and this government has agreed to give away a key strategic asset in the Indian Ocean, ending more than 200 years of British sovereignty. It is a wrong decision, and we stand by that completely. A month has now gone since the government's announcement, but we're still in the dark about exactly what the government has agreed, and this is simply not acceptable. We have no treaty, and vital questions remain unanswered. That is unacceptable, and the Minister needs to put that right today. We cannot afford for our military base on Diego Garcia to be compromised in this way. So may I ask, what safeguards will be in place to ensure that no other states can establish themselves or place their assets, and in particular strategic assets, on any nearby islands in the archipelago? And how does this decision affect the strategic defence review that is underway right now? How much money will Labour be asking British taxpayers to send to Mauritius each year under this deal, which we don't even know the details of? Which departmental budgets will this come from? What's the total figure? The House expects transparency on this, Mr Speaker, including about what taxpayers are funding, and we need to hold the government to account on this. So can the Minister please give a cast-iron guarantee that the UK will be able to unilaterally extend the agreement on the military base beyond 99 years? Because that's all we've heard for now. What will be the mechanism for doing this? This is a crucial piece of scrutiny that I think we all need to know about, particularly as the Minister has discussed and raised a point about national security, and the national security apparatus in particular agreeing to this arrangement. And what discussions has the Foreign Secretary, who I know is not here today, has personally undertaken with the Chagossian community, who he will know are beyond distraught about this agreement. The elections in Mauritius and the United States, Mr Speaker, pose further questions, and it's right that we follow up on this. Labour rushed into this deal just before the Mauritian elections, even though ministers surely must have realised a change in government was a strong possibility. Why did they do this? So the Minister does need to be clear about this. We want to know how they're going to engage with the new US administration. And Mr Speaker, this side of the House opposes this government's decision on this, and we intend to hold the government to account.
Mr Speaker, can I firstly welcome the Shadow Foreign Secretary to a place in this chamber. We were in a committee earlier on today, but I welcome her to a place, and as always, I've had a good engagement with her on issues in the past, but she's right to ask important questions. But I think one of the first things I need to do, Mr Speaker, is to correct this idea somehow that we are giving up the base. That's exactly the opposite of what we're doing. We're securing the future of the base. The base will continue to operate. It will continue to operate as it has done. She asks an important question about security guarantees in relation to the outer islands. This is an important question. There will be clear commitments in the treaty for robust security arrangements, including preventing the presence of foreign security forces on the outer islands. We simply would not have signed off an agreement that compromised any of our security interests or those of our allies. And indeed, this has been discussed not just at the political level in the United States, but at a deep technical level. And she will know from her time in government about the nature of the special relationship and the depth of that relationship. And that is why we've only proceeded on the basis that we were all satisfied with these arrangements. And she will be able to scrutinise these in due course, as will the House, Mr Speaker. The treaty will be presented in the usual way after signature. It will go through the usual process. She asked when. We've, of course, just had the Mauritian election. Of course, we'll be engaging with the new administration there. We'll be seeking to present this for signature, and then we will be presenting the treaty in all its detail to the House. She asked about an extension period, Mr Speaker. There is a provision in the treaty for an extension period after the 99-year period. And she asked about the Chagossians. Again, I would gently say there are a range of views in the Chagossian community. Those have been expressed to me on a range of occasions, both before I came into government and since I've been in government. There are a range of views on this arrangement. We respect all the different views that are out there. We will continue to engage with the Chagossian community, but I am absolutely clear that there are important provisions in this deal that support the Chagossian community, both their ability to return to the outer islands, the visits, the trust fund, the unilateral support we will continue to provide, and of course the fact that Chagossians are welcome to come here to the UK and take up British citizenship, which was an agreement under the previous government.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Portsmouth is the home of the Royal Navy, and as the Portsmouth North MP, can I welcome the appointment of Jonathan Powell as the National Security Advisor, who played an important part in negotiating this deal. Does the Minister agree with me that his experience in helping to negotiate the Good Friday Agreement and work on some of the world's most complex conflicts, he is uniquely placed to advise the government on tackling the challenges ahead and to protect the advancements of UK security?
Well, I totally agree with my honourable friend, who I know takes a keen interest in the overseas territories, in particular Gibraltar. For her comments, I totally agree with her about the new National Security Advisor. He's a remarkable individual with a huge track record in government of making deals, of getting things done, which I know is appreciated by our friends on the opposite side of the Atlantic too. And he is somebody who takes the national security of this country extraordinarily seriously. And therefore, I completely agree with her characterisation.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Al Pinkerton.
Mr. Speaker, many Chagossians from all over the country gathered at a rally yesterday where they expressed their concerns about the UK-Mauritius agreement, and we reiterate our concerns here today. The exclusion of the voice of Chagossians is wrong. It cannot be right, and surely no member of this House could think it is acceptable that the Chagossians are denied the opportunity for self-determination. So can I ask the Minister to update the House to confirm, please, the timescales by which Parliament will have an oversight over the final treaty? Will the Minister also look again at injecting the voice of Chagossians into this process, even at this late stage, please? And can we also raise, please, the case of the Tamils stranded on Diego Garcia? We welcome recent news reports that they will now be airlifted to the UK, but will the Minister update the House on whether this will take place and whether they will be permitted permanent right to resettlement in the UK? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman speaking for the Liberal Democrats for his questions. I know the future of the islands is hugely important to the Chagossian community. I've engaged with the Chagossian community over many, many years, and since I've been in government too. And we have always been clear, Mr. Speaker, on the importance of respecting their interests. I do have to say, though, that the negotiations were between the UK and Mauritius as the sovereign states, with our priority being to secure the full operation of the base on Diego Garcia. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is crucial that we recognise the importance of Chagossian interests within this process, and we have done. And I am confident that when the full deal is presented to Parliament, which it will do in due course, that there will be important provisions in there that I think will reassure members of the Chagossian community. And as I mentioned, some of them already have been made public in terms of the ability to visit, the ability to resettle on the outer islands, the UK citizenship guarantees, the trust fund, and of course the UK's own support, which is crucially important. And this comes on back of support for some time. He asked about the Sri Lankan migrants on Diego Garcia. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government inherited a deeply troubling situation which remained unresolved under the last administration for years after the migrants' arrival on Diego Garcia, resulting in mounting legal challenges. And we've been working at pace to find a solution that protects the welfare of the individuals and the integrity of British territorial borders. Due to the exceptional nature of the cases, the government has taken the decision to relocate a small number of the migrants to the UK, but this is subject to security checks. They will get a short period of permission to enter the UK when the individuals can consider their personal circumstances and next steps.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the wonderful things about our Parliament, our democracy, is that our citizens can see our proceedings, but so too can our foes. Those who wish us harm, those who have no good intentions toward us, will be looking across at the opposition benches, and they will be seeing that there is not a credible national security team when they're asking questions of this government. But I wanted to confine my question about a constituent of mine who has lived in the UK for the last 17 years after leaving the Chagos Islands. He is keen to reunite with his family who are now UK citizens, but housing costs are an issue. Will the Minister get back to me with information about whether housing support could be part of overall government support to the Chagossian community?
Well, I thank him for his question. Obviously, I don't know the full details of his individual constituent's case, but if he wants to write to me about that, I will, of course, come back to him in due course.
James Cleverly.
Can the Minister confirm or deny that the Right Honourable Member for Holborn and St Pancras had any unminuted conversations with Philip Sands, KC, about the Mauritian claim over the Chagos Islands?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister engaged with the former Prime Minister of Mauritius. He engaged with the US administration over these matters. We've engaged with a wide range of partners in these discussions, and he, of course, is very familiar with them as the former Foreign Secretary who was part of that process.
John Slinger.
I hope my honourable friend, the Minister, will agree with me that as we discuss the very important issues raised by the honourable member for Clacton, that we acknowledge that all honourable and right honourable members are doing what is in the best interest of our country. Yeah. And indeed, that honourable and right honourable members opposite do not have a monopoly on national security and on defence. Yeah. and indeed that it's this government that's reforming and improving our international reputation around the world. And our decision on the Chagos Islands in protecting the base and the other issues that my honourable friend has mentioned is an important part of this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, Madam Deputy Speaker, the importance of national security to this government is the heart of the missions that the Prime Minister has set out, that are being put into practice by the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary, myself and others across government. We would never take decisions that compromise the national security of this country or indeed of our allies, and that's why I'm confident this decision is the right one. And let's remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, this was begun under the previous administration because they recognised the challenge and that something needed to be done about this.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Deputy Speaker, can I just say to the right honourable gentleman that surely now, given that the fact that the Mauritian government that he was dealing with has failed now and is no longer in power, isn't this now really a case of a deal with the wrong people at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, and it has abandoned the Chagossians? Chagossians have been very clear throughout, and it can't misrepresent the fact the vast majority wanted to go back, but they also wanted to remain British citizens. And so now we have an incoming government in America, a new government in Mauritius. What is the point of continuing with this agreement? We should start again and recognise the Chagossians do not want to be Mauritian, but they want to have us give them their property back. Why don't we just do that and simplify the whole issue?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the right honourable gentleman knows that, of course, the national security interests of this country and indeed of our allies transcend administrations. We've just had an election. His former government started this process. We're the ones who got it done. And with regard to Mauritius, we welcome Dr Ramgoolin's election. I understand that he and his government are going to be sworn in over the next few days, and we look forward to working with them to take forward this agreement. He's a friend of the UK with deep professional and personal connections, having studied and worked here, and we're looking forward to working with him. And I would point out that his party in opposition also made clear that they in no way wanted to contend with the operation of our base on Diego Garcia. So we're looking forward to engaging with them in the days to come.
Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the spirit of cross-party working, I'm wondering if the Minister would like to take this moment to thank the previous Conservative government for starting negotiations on this important work. Because they realised then, even if they do not realise now, the importance of this for our country's national security.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his observation, and the right honourable gentleman, the former Foreign Secretary, appears to be on his way out. But he recognised, as did many others in the previous administration, that we needed to secure a long-term basis for this base to meet the security needs of ourselves and our allies, and we need to put it on a sure legal footing. And we were the government that came in and got the deal done.
Deputy Speaker, does the Minister agree with me that the principal way to defend national security is to stand fast behind the international rules-based system? And does he further agree that the principal way to do that is to adhere to rulings of institutions like the International Court of Justice? Now, and furthermore, we've had a great deal of concern in this House in this urgent question about the sovereign democratic will of the Chagossians. So what mechanism will the UK government put in place to ensure that this House can have confidence that their sovereign ambitions as a people will be respected in this treaty and not simply sacrificed for convenience?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, he's absolutely right when it comes to international law and adherence to it, and this government is committed to the rule of law and international law, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get this deal done, to put that base on a secure legal footing, and our relationships with Mauritius and indeed other states, and there had been substantial criticism from other key partners around the world about our failure to come to a settlement on this, which was impacting on our interests. So he's absolutely right on that point. As I've said repeatedly on the Chagossians, I've engaged with them on many occasions. We will continue to engage with them. We'll continue to listen to the range of views that are in the community, which there are a huge number of, and we'll continue to ensure that their interests are protected, which I'm confident this treaty does.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know the Minister is a strong ally and supporter of all our overseas territories, as is this government. Will he take this moment now to restate this government's unconditional commitment to the right of the people of the Falklands and the peoples of Gibraltar to self-determine? And will he also confirm that we will continue to work closely with all of our overseas territories?
Well, I thank him, Madam Deputy Speaker, for his important question. I can absolutely confirm that, and not least in the actions of myself and my ministerial colleagues. My colleague, the Minister for the Armed Forces, was in the Falklands just in the last week, reiterating our absolute and robust commitment to their self-determination and sovereignty. I was in Gibraltar making the same point just a few weeks ago, and I was in 3 of our overseas territories last week making just the same commitments. So this government is committed to our overseas territories. I look forward to welcoming the leaders to the Joint Ministerial Council next week to say that in person.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister once again has come to this chamber and said that the last government started these negotiations. May I remind him that it was the last government that ended the negotiations because the Foreign Secretary did not agree with the advisory legal advice that was given. This Foreign Secretary capitulated in 2 days. He has said that he will not reveal the cost of this deal because the government do not release costs related to overseas bases. But on the 14th of October, my honourable friend, the member for Huntingdon, asked the Minister for the Armed Forces a question regarding the total cost related to an overseas base in Kenya, to which the answer revealed the costs that this government was giving to that base. What's so different in this case?
Well, there's a very clear difference, Madam Deputy Speaker, which is that's a training area, not a major base, which I'm not going to the details of the operation on. And I'm surprised that he continues to ask for details on what is a hugely important base to our national security, and providing that information would put the security of that base at risk.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know the Minister is a strong friend of our overseas territories. I wonder if he could outline the importance of putting the US base on a legal footing and give us a bit more detail about how that will enable us to work with our allies in terms of countering any potential Chinese threat in the region.
Well, it's a very important point that my honourable friend raises. It's been raised by honourable members in good faith on the other side, and indeed others who are looking at this. I am absolutely confident that when the detail of this treaty is provided, and of course at other technical levels to those at appropriate levels, we have clear commitments for robust security arrangements to deal with that challenge that he refers to, including preventing the presence of foreign security forces on the outer islands. And I reiterate again, Madam Deputy Speaker, we simply would not have countenance to deal that in any way put our national security or that of our allies at risk.
Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Quite simply, do we have the unilateral right to extend, yes or no?
Minister.
I've made very clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have the right to extend the treaty beyond the 99-year period, and he'll be able to scrutinise the detail of that in due course.
Calvin Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's difficult to fathom concerns raised by the opposition about the consequences of governmental transition, as it was the former Conservative Foreign Secretary, the Right Honourable Member for Braintree, who, when he was leading negotiations with Mauritius, that said our primary objective is to ensure the continued effective operation of our defence facility on Diego Garcia. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that this government has now delivered that, and shouldn't the Conservatives be welcoming this?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I first thank him for his service for our country and its national security, and all of those in the House who've come in newly, who've served in our armed forces. He is absolutely right that we are protecting our national security, that we're putting things on a secure footing, and I completely agree with his comments.
Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Alexander Downer, former Australian Foreign Minister, former High Commissioner to this country and former UN Special Advisor on Cyprus, and a good friend of this country, says that surrender of the Chagos is symptomatic of a country that no longer has geopolitical perspective. What does the Minister say to Mr Downer's remarks, and does he agree furthermore with Mr Downer's comments that the last Labour government was prepared to capitulate on the 2 Cypriot sovereign base areas, Deucalion and Akrotiri? Who'd have thought? Isn't the Chagos surrender just same old Labour, strong on post-colonial guilt and weak on safety, security and stability?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have to say I don't recognise those comments in the slightest, not least because we have made repeatedly clear our commitment to our overseas territories, to the Falklands, to Gibraltar, to the sovereign base areas in Cyprus, which he well knows are protected under the 1960 treaty. I have made statements to that effect. We are clear in our support for them and their importance to us. The whole purpose is not handing something away. This is about Diego Garcia being on a secure footing, our military base, our presence being secure for the future.
Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The expulsion of the Chagossian people from both Diego Garcia and the archipelago was an act of wanton brutality by the British forces at the time. The Chagos Islanders have fought a doughty battle for more than 40 years in courts all over the world and the United Nations and in courts in this country, demanding their right to return. And all along, they've been determined to achieve that right, and they have, I think, deserve our congratulations on that. That right to return must be carried out, and international judicial systems have all shown this quite clearly that it should be part of Mauritius. Therefore, the return of the islands to Mauritius is obviously the correct thing to do. Can the Minister assure me that in their right to return to the archipelago, Paraspanos and the other islands, they will also have a right of some sort of presence, visit, or whatever to Diego Garcia itself, because it is perfectly possible that these things could be arranged. And can I finally ask him not to descend down the road of rebuilding the British Empire, which is apparently what the Conservative Party and Reform want to do? We don't live in an age of empire. We live in an age of the right of people to be able to live their lives according to international law, and that is what's on offer.
Hear, hear.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question. I've been very, very clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, the way the UK removed Chagossians from the archipelago in the 1960s and 70s was wrong. I know that there is agreement across the House on this, and we're committed to building a relationship with the community built on respect and acknowledgement of the wrongs of the past. He asked a very technical question, and he is absolutely right that Chagossians will have the right to visit all the islands. He'll understand that given the sensitivity of the facilities on Diego Garcia, there are obviously some procedures in place around that, but there will be possible to have visits. We hope to be able to announce the scheme for that in due course next year. And most importantly, this treaty allows resettlement of the outer islands by Mauritius.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Clearly, further to my right honourable friend's question in relation to incoming administrations in Mauritius and the United States. Clearly, our allies in the United States are going to have real serious concerns about what the proposals are. Could the Minister therefore set out the position in terms of when the treaty is expected to be signed, and indeed whether this House will get the say over whether that treaty should be signed before it's cast into law?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, he'll be aware, as somebody who's been in the House a long time, of the procedures for dealing with treaties in this place. It will be signed, it will come through this place, and it will have the appropriate scrutiny. It's only right that it does so and that questions are asked. I am absolutely confident that when the full details of the treaty are provided, including to the incoming administration in the United States, they'll be absolutely confident that this meets US national security interests, it meets UK national security interests, and is in the mutual benefit of all parties involved.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. So if the incoming President Trump administration confirm that they are against this dreadful deal, will the government stop negotiations and apologise to this House, or will they try and force it upon our most important international strategic partner?
Answer.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, he will surely know the convention that we deal with one administration at a time. We have very positive and warm engagement with President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance's incoming administration. We look forward to discussing these matters with them, and we will engage with the United States in the usual way. We are absolutely clear that this treaty is in UK, US national security interests. It meets the security concerns, and it puts this base on a secure footing into the next century.
Anthony Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister explain why did the government rush into this deal so it could be completed just before the Mauritian election? And is it a proper thing for the British government to give diplomatic kudos to a party in a foreign election?
Madam Deputy Speaker, well, I completely reject those comments. The idea that we rushed into something when the previous government had spent over 2 years, multiple rounds of negotiations, preparing the basis for which we then got a deal done on, it's simply not a rush. That's us getting the job done and keeping our national security and our interests secure.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Minister, the answers perhaps this morning haven't been what we've really sought from you, so I asked this question in a different way. Does the Minister acknowledge the feelings of Chagossians as demonstrated in their peaceful protest to having their sovereignty stripped from them behind their backs? And does the Minister not believe that the deal struck with China for Hong Kong, as an example, which has not been respected, and that withdrawal has left Hong Kong people saying that they've been abandoned? That should serve as a warning. And will the Minister not rethink the decision and respect the wishes of the Chagossians?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, the honourable gentleman knows I have a great deal of respect for him on these matters and his care for people and human rights around the world. I am very, very clear that this treaty and the deal respects the rights and the interests of Chagossians. We've sought to put them at the heart of the arrangements. I've engaged with many Chagossians who, I have to say again, Madam Deputy Speaker, have a range of views. We've already heard that today in the House on this, and it's absolutely clear to me that we need to put their interests at the heart of the deal. We've done that. I'm confident that when they look at the detail of this, that they will see very, very positive outcomes for them and their communities, and we will provide that detail to the House in due course.
Thank you. That was the final question for that business. Points of order come after UQs and statements unless it is directly relevant to the UQ or statement. Is it directly relevant and urgent?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Obviously, the issue of cost is of huge importance because it's public money, and we on this side think that the public should know what the cost is involved in this agreement. Now, the Minister said to my honourable friend for Hamble Valley, well, he said, first of all, that they don't give out the figure of the cost because they don't state the cost of overseas bases. My honourable friend for Hamble Valley pointed out that the Minister next to him pointed out that has stated the clear cost of the base in Kenya, and the Minister for the Foreign Office therefore said that's only a training base. But I can confirm to the House that back in November 22, James Heapy, then Minister for the Armed Forces, stated the cost to the then member for East Lothian for running the base in Akrotiri. That is not a training base at all. He gave 3 years' worth of figures. Madam Speaker, it is clearly not unprecedented. It's an extremely important point of public interest because it's public money. How else can we hold the government to account if they won't tell us what they're going to pay to rent back the base that we already own?
Well, no, that is not a matter for the Chair, but the honourable member has put his very robust point of order on the record. Yeah, we will now begin our second statement.